Good afternoon. As most of you probably know, I'm John Vile, Dean of the Honors College. I do want to remind you, and I know we've sort of drifted in dribs and drabs today, but we do have a roll, so you want to probably recirculate that again and make sure that you have signed next to your name. Dr. Phillips is at an out-of-town meeting today, and so it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mary Evins, who is a research professor in history at MTSU and also one of our resident faculty members. She earned her BA and MAT at the University of Chicago, from Vanderbilt, and her AM and PhD from University of Chicago. Before coming to MTSU, she worked with projects connected to the Smithsonian, the American Research Institute in Southeast Turkey, Chicago's Oriental Institute, and Harvard University's Semitic Museum, as well as the National Center for Scientific Research. Dr. Thomas could probably give you the French version of that, in Paris, France. Her teaching and research focuses on civic learning and democratic engagement, including women's work in the public sphere in the late 1800s and the early 20th century that laid the groundwork for women's suffrage. And I have learned from her, you call them suffragists and not suffragettes. Important lesson. She has compiled two anthologies, Tennessee's New Women in the New South during the Progressive Era, which was published in 2013, and Constructing Citizenship Education Association Service Suffrage, Tennessee Public Women in the Progressive Era, which will be published next year. Her talk today is on the topic, the American Democracy Project and Civic Excellence. Let's welcome her.
Hey everybody, glad to be here. Greetings, happy Monday afternoon as we are approaching our Thanksgiving break. Thanks to Dean Vile for the introduction, and hello to everybody. I know some of you are in my classes or have been in the past, and some of you we have not met yet, and if that's the case for you, I apologize for that. I'm sorry. My office is just upstairs. I'm in the suite that has the all the student study desks. I'm literally the flip side of the other corner beyond Dr. Judy Al-Bakri's office. She's in one corner, I'm in the other. So you can't miss my office. It's the one that has all of the registered vote paraphernalia in the front of it. My door is always open, and I would look forward to getting to know you if we haven't met already. As Dean Vile mentioned, I'm a professor of history, and I teach primarily history classes here at MTSU. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Good. My primary research focuses on civil rights, human rights, women's rights, the human quest for civic equity and equal access to societal, economic, and political power. Tennessee's women's work in advancing their own citizenship through intentionality, tenacity, putting themselves into public work, their commitment to doing what's right, their commitment to achieving progress, and their commitment to forming a more perfect union. These ideas consume my historic research because that framing is the very framing of the American experiment. And as I speak on my assigned topic for today, which is MTSU's American Democracy Project, I trust that you will see that the two areas are not set apart from one another. They are indeed the exact same important work and part of the same effort, part of the same important progress required in the work toward perfecting our union. People had to combat and struggle against all odds proactively to earn rights in the past, and they have to work proactively now, again, in the present day, to keep them, and in some cases to get them back. Coretta Scott King said 30 years ago about achieving civic and societal justice that struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Scott King knew that you do not finally win in a state of freedom that is protected forever. It just doesn't work that way, she said. Democracy, it turns out, is quite fragile. It is a work in progress. It is aspirational, and it requires conscious commitment and constant effort. And it needs strong courage, moral courage, and this is the lesson that we learned from the suffragists who wrested their citizenship from the men in power through the 19th Amendment. And it's the lesson of the 15th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act and the Roe v. Wade protection of women's dominion of her own body, the hard fought for legal right that we know can be cut back and taken away. We've seen this historically, we see it in the present day. So winning legal rights is a strong step, but it's never permanent, and it does not necessarily establish equitable access nor systemic justice. Differing state laws throw up impediments, rights are repeatedly undermined, denial of equal human justice betrays the civic virtues of our noblest national heritage, and therefore steadfast enforcement is mandatory. We're called continually to defend human rights, to protect them, to restructure them, to embed them again and again and again and again and again, to assure that there is fairness in this nation for everyone. And we as citizens must stay alert and engaged and dedicated to that vision. Equitable forward action to expand the voices of all Americans, to shatter castes, to pull everyone into a more just and welcoming mainstream, and to assure that the privileges and power structures of everyday society are available to all, has never been simple, and it has never been straightforward. Plateaus of progress are attained, and they're almost always accomplished through compromises and backroom deals and stepping on others and with limitations. None of it is very pure. And when powerful forward steps are jubilantly achieved, backlash inevitably follows, and there are repercussions, resentments, and counteractions that take place. I can give you historic example after historic example. Perhaps more than a century of potent, significant race progress, for example, across widespread legal platforms in the United States. Despite all that, racism and white privilege remain deeply embedded in American hearts and minds and American systems even today. The National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, calls on Americans to remember and acknowledge that casually accepted extra-legal lynchings of black citizens that shamed U.S. history for decades, and although it reached its nadir in the 1890s, and we wanted to believe that it had ended with the killing of Emmett Till in 1955, but in fact it has continued on into the present day. 52 years after the historic 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Alabama in 1963, the Mother Emanuel AME Church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015 showed the continuation of this race violence tradition. And the unabating murders of unarmed black men and women by police and vigilantes in recent years have front and centered how this nationwide travesty has shifted and evolved over time. From Trayvon Martin in Florida in 2012 to Michael Brown in Missouri in 2014, and Botham Jean in Texas in 2018, to Breonna Taylor in Kentucky and George Floyd in Minnesota in 2020, and to Tyree Nichols in Tennessee just this year. It remains vitally important that we say their names and stop the clearly identifiable, redundant national nightmare of brutal policing of some of our American fellow citizens. Patriarchy, racism, nativism, Christian centricism, heterosexism, transmesia run deep in America, and there's much I could say as a history professor about each of these. And I say all of that to be sure that you know and understand that history is not in the past. History is not stagnant. It is not dead. History is not about passing a test and being able to memorize a phone book list of names and dates. History is powerfully relevant. It is the context of our current daily lives, and we learn it to inform ourselves about how to get better, and we learn it to motivate us to build our agency, our personal agency, to fire our passion, and to ignite our own commitment, to get our act together, and to make history every day in our own lives. So in addition to teaching history, I also teach expressly honors courses. This semester, the Honors Transfer Fellow Research class, getting our incoming junior year honors students ready to write and argue for a research proposal next semester. That's a course that I'm currently in the middle of. And I have partnered with Dean Phillips on the fall lecture series almost every year for the past several, with the exception of this fall actually, when he instead invited me to be one of the speakers for the series for the history of the Honors College. Additionally, and as with a number of selected honors faculty members, I have in prior semesters been the professor of record and organized this very lecture series on my own. And I'm pleased to announce that I'm doing that next semester as well. So here's an advance peek about what that is. You may share it with your friends, or if you're one of those people who's taking UH 3000 multiple times, apparently you can take it up to 3 times. I'll see you next semester, and when I'll be facilitating for the deans our overall topic on mental health. But what this really means is that we're going to be talking about human flourishing. We're going to be talking about what constitutes the good life, a life well lived, a life that is lived in balance, a life that has grit and resilience, and that may experience hyper highs and lows, but it's able to work itself out to get back to a steady state of trying to keep life even all the way around. It's a life that learns how to let go of guilt and shame, a life that forgives, a life that's humble and grateful, and knows how to show gratitude, because showing appreciation betters us internally and sends good energy out to others. And when we genuinely show our valuing of another person, it uplifts them, which in turn turns around and uplifts us. As that wise psychological counselor and thought leader and novelist Maya Angelou said, it's not what you say to another person that matters, it's how you make them feel. So we'll be looking into building up ourselves by building up others, and in so doing, creating community, which is what former Congressman John Lewis, who in the 1960s was part of the Nashville student movement here in Middle Tennessee for civil rights, when he was just a college student, just your age, he called it the beloved community. And looking at and building community, building society, creating wholeness and open-heartedness and inclusivity, and in doing the work of forming a more perfect union, we heal ourselves, we better ourselves, we strengthen ourselves through purposeful, meaningful life by being an activist for good. So like these guys, it's all of a piece, it all intersects, it all comes together. So, back to the history of the MTSU Honors College. I titled this talk ADP and Civic Excellence, and by that, to be clear, what we're talking about is the American Democracy Project and Civic Excellence. This is the American Democracy Project specifically at MTSU on this campus. ADP on this campus equals American Democracy Project. I chose the title, that particular one, because I wanted, back in August when we were talking about this, on the flyers that were to be widespread across campus, and in the announcements to be made and emails to be sent out and press articles to be written about the Honors 50th Anniversary Series, I didn't want American Democracy Project to sound out in the public as elitist, like it might be viewed as just an honors thing, as an upper crust sort of sniff honors only program. It is not. Perhaps I was being a little too anxious and sensitive, but ADP is inclusive and everybody is welcome, and you don't have to be an honors scholar or a Buchanan scholar to do the work of ADP or to be involved in it, to be a member of it, or to engage in any of the activism that our students do. ADP by definition is for everybody. And what that everybody is now. What are we, 18,000 students, used to be 22, I think we're a bit smaller than that now. So on the flyers and the posters and in the copy that you have in your notebooks, it had just this basic title, but as I say, that was back in August, and really what I wanted to say was this: American Democracy Project, the Honors College and Civic Excellence, which is my topic for today, and I want to try to explain what the American Democracy Project is, why it's at MTSU, and why it's part of the University Honors College now. So let me start with the very first question: what the heck is ADP in the first place? I took a group of our MTSU honors students to Boston just this past summer, and while we were there at a National American Democracy Project conference, students said to me, "Oh, I didn't realize other universities universities had this same program, I thought it was just an ADP student organization. No, it's not. It's a national initiative that in 2023 celebrated its 20th birthday. So whereas Honors College here at MTSU is 50 years old this year, the American Democracy Project nationally is 20 years old. To tell you about ADP, here's our symbol. This is around the campus and in various places. It stands for the idea that MTSU chooses to focus on graduating civically engaged, globally responsible citizens, putting civic learning at the forefront of this university's identity, and creating our university's legacy here in the 21st century, which I believe we're doing. ADP comes out of an organization nationally that Middle Tennessee State University is a part of, which is called AASCU, AASCU, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. It's a national umbrella organization for essentially training deans and provosts and presidents of universities. It provides initiative structures for public universities, and because it is for public universities and not private ones, Vanderbilt and Rhodes and Swanee can't be a member of AASCU, but University of Tennessee is, and University of Memphis, Austin Peay, and our other public university systems. It was founded in 2003, and as fate would have it, MTSU's provost was at that founding meeting at the AASCU, at an AASCU national meeting, and we therefore have been one of the founding institutional members of ADP since its inception. Our founding director of American Democracy Project happens to be right now our university's provost, Dr. Mark Burns. 20 years ago also started MTSU's very first QEP, which is called Quality Enhancement Plan, which is what allows our university to be continually recertified through the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. And our first QEP here at MTSU 20 years ago was experiential learning, and American Democracy Project was a part of that. They were considered to be hand in hand as providing a step forward for how the university wished to proceed with pedagogy, how we wish to teach our students. The wording that AASCU posts says we're going to produce graduates who are civically knowledgeable, they're involved citizens in their communities. Is that you? Have we achieved that? It says that universities must be prepared to teach and prepare the next generation of citizens to assume their responsibility as stewards of place, become the next leaders to step up and essentially run our country. When American Democracy Project was initially chartered and begun, it actually fell in lockstep with a piece of federal legislation that passed through the U.S. Congress that was clarifying that we have, because our students are so civically uneducated, there was kind of a getting out the violin, this is unfortunate, we need to do something to remedy it. Congress created a sort of what they consider to be a low bar of the fact that our primary civic holiday every year is in the summer, 4th of July. We're not in school. Elementary schools aren't in school. We're all back at home, going to the lake, having barbecues with our family, but it's not a moment during the academic year when we can pedagogically learn about and celebrate the structures of our nation. And so when the piece of federal legislation was passed in the early part of the 2000s, it said that the educational authorities in the states would properly observe Constitution Day, and because the Constitution was signed on September 17th, 1787, Dean Bile can quote the entire Constitution by heart, that it was required of those of us in public institutions to provide, and I love this phrase, complete instruction of citizens in their responsibilities as citizens of the United States. Complete instruction. I'm thinking, I'm not so sure we're quite able to do that. But what we have done is really articulate a framework for how we wish to approach this challenge, which is through the basic concepts of civic learning. We want to advance civic learning across all our disciplines, across all our campus. We know that civic learning cannot be relegated simply to political science departments, and I've only recently learned that political science departments almost really don't want to take on too much of what they define as civic learning because it impedes with the theory of political science. We need to have a discussion about this afterwards, Dean Weil. We do celebrate Constitution Day every year at MTSU and have for approximately 20 years. And maybe if you've heard of American Democracy Project, you know about it from that framework. Since it's been here at Honors, you very well know that you were required. In fact, we set up the entire Constitution Day program to be at 3 o'clock during this lecture series time so that you would be able to take part in that plenary program, and then we asked you to go around and be one of those who would choose to read the Constitution, either here with us at Honors or at another location around the university. So we do our bit here at Honors to help push that and advance that, but it's not just for our college, it's actually for every single college. And why we do it is because achieving civic learning across the disciplines is in fact a primary objective of the university. I show you this slide really to tell you what the higher education 3 C's are. They stand for curriculum, which is content, which is college, which is exactly why you go to school in the first place. That's your major and the area that you primarily study. There's also the second C, which is about careers. Tennessee loves that one. That's all about job placement and workforce development, and we're very good at both of those. And most universities are especially good at those two of the pillars of higher education of the 3 C's. It's that third one, which is citizenship and civic skills and civic learning and community connection, in which we seem to flag and not be as successful. And it's not that we don't try, we certainly do. In fact, if you can Google, if you've never read it, MTSU's Quest for Success 2025. We keep changing our university-wide mission and vision objectives. But if you read right inside the first cover of Quest 2025, which came out, I don't know, these things are always about 5 years in advance. It probably came out around 2018, 2019, somewhere around in there as we're visioning again for the next 5 years, as we're now envisioning for 2030 and on into 2040, so we're always trying to keep ahead of those. But if you look at the wording, right on the second page of MTSU's Quest for Success is the phraseology that Middle Tennessee State University will graduate students who are prepared to thrive professionally, they are committed to critical inquiry and lifelong learning, and they are engaged as civically, globally responsible citizens. So wow, how impressive is that? Both our president and our provost assured that that phraseology got into MTSU's Quest for Success. And if you break that goal down, prepared to thrive professionally as career, committed to critical inquiry and lifelong learning is the curriculum piece, and engaged as civically, globally responsible citizens is obviously the citizenship piece of that, and acknowledging within MTSU what our purpose is. I hope you take that to heart and think about it. It's a nice visual to imagine the triangle of those 3 objectives. So the university states it outright. It's who we are, and it's what our purpose is. Much I could talk about of how it all came to be here, who the key people were. As I mentioned, Dean Burns, scratch that, he was a dean, he was the dean of liberal arts before he became provost. He was the director of the American Democracy Project prior to that. Professor Jim Williams was the second ADP director. I came on in 2009, so this year marks my 15th year of heading it. A lot of programs are interconnected with ADP. I mentioned the EXL program. Our next QEP that followed that 10 years later is MT Engage. That whole engagement piece obviously is a piece and critically connected to the concept of civic engagement. This is all in our objective as a university to continue on this upward path toward becoming a university that focuses on and has as its highest objective civic learning. We try to embed pieces such as Constitution Day, but our goal is to construct environments where education for democracy and civic responsibility is pervasive across this university, not partial, and central to this university's identity, not just peripheral. And again, I circled back to you to ask, within your experience at MTSU, have we achieved that? A lot I can say and condense into the 20 years of ADP at MTSU. The QEP, we had our very first ever at Middle Tennessee State University faculty learning community that was created on helping faculty learn how to create civic learning and embed civic learning in their courses. We've had Raider learning communities that have combined and focused on civic learning. There have been initiatives and incentives for faculty members, carrots if you will, to help faculty take the step forward to move toward trying to embed greater civic learning in their own coursework. We have used this principle as having MTSU recognized as a Carnegie Foundation, Carnegie Engagement Classification for an engaged university. All this is on paper. And then as we took this work forward, we created through CISL and Student Affairs an American Democracy Project student organization, and that's the front through which so many of our students actually know about ADP, is the ADP student org. But what's been true very recently, and this started before COVID, and it took many years for it to evolve over the course of these 20 into the system, but a great coup and a feather in our university's cap is that we have now embedded civic learning as a learning outcome within MTSU's brand new True Blue Core. The True Blue Core, as I mentioned, has been in process and learning through Gen Ed redesign ever since MTSU left the Tennessee Board of Regents, and we've been working on this now for 5+ years. It won't really technically kick off until next fall, and most of you are upperclassmen, so you're probably finished with your Gen Ed courses. But that's going to be a major accomplishment here, to be sure that civic learning can be embedded in as many Gen Ed courses as possible, and we have made that happen. Dr. McPhee has helped foster that as well, and just last year he hired a brand new special assistant to the university president on this very topic and for this very issue. And the university is getting together right now to support that further by applying for a pretty sizable Teagle grant. It's another granting foundation nationally here in the U.S. called Education for American Life, trying to forefront and move to higher visibility our objective of constructing academic environments where education for democracy and civic responsibility is pervasive across this university, not partial, and central to this university's identity, not peripheral. It's part of what we must do, and then connected to that is that we have to measure it and assess it. I don't think as students this is the kind of thing you think about very much, but faculty members in their teaching think about it all the time, because it's kind of a pain in our own rear ends, because we have to know how to assess and measure and monitor. Measurement is an academic bugaboo, if you will. And how do we do it well? We can count the number of courses, for instance, that have become EXL courses, or how many courses have become MT Engage courses, or how many courses have become Civic Learning Certified through General Education. How many students have joined clubs? Does that mean that you're engaged on campus? How many service hours have you worked? And there are certain ways in which those are calculated. How many people have signed up for the political and civic engagement minor or are taking EXL 3030 courses, which is civic engagement practicum? Teagle Grant Foundation, now that we're looking for the wording of can MTSU apply for that money, talks about the fragility of democracy, which is exactly what Coretta Scott King spoke of, that we must work toward collective civic life. We need to require that students build in and learn about and understand their responsibilities to our civic entities, and that students demonstrate democratic participation. That democratic participation be part of the lived experiences of students before they leave the university, and that students must participate in this political system that was built and designed for self-governance. This type of comprehensive civic knowledge is mandatory for a university to achieve. Again, I put it back at you. Are you a full participant in this political system of ours that's designed for self-governance, and so much effort and energy went into assuring that 18-year-olds would not only offer their bodies on the battlefield, but would actually provide their bodies at the ballot box so that they could be the ones to create the society in which we live. Connecting the dots from education into action. What's the missing link? Voting. And are MTSU students doing that? And are they doing it well? That's one measure. There are many other measures. But in 2014, MTSU joined something called NSOLVE, the National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement, NSLVE. It was yet another tool, a humble little tool, to determine if we were making progress in a measurable way in our students becoming active members in a participatory democracy. What happens for us now that we have joined this NSOLVE study, and we have been in it now for almost a decade, is that every 2 years, Tufts University, which is where the study emanates from, sends MTSU its every 2-year report on MTSU student voting. Again, we've done studies on student voting before, we've estimated student voting numbers, we've worked through our Tennessee Secretary of State's office looking at precincts and have done analyses, but in a miracle of metadata, the fine pieces of which I could describe to you, but it's very intriguing, we actually know to a nose how many of our students actually participate in voting. NSOLVE data tell us how many of you are under 18 and were not eligible to vote. NSOLVE data tell us how many of you are foreign nationals and not U.S. citizens and thus ineligible to vote. How many of you are indeed U.S. citizens, 18 years of age and are registered. And of those who are registered, whether you voted or not. And they're able, because it's a nationwide study, to extract data from Secretary of State's offices, every state in the union. So even if you are still registered and voting back in Georgia, for instance, we know that you voted, and we also have data that tell us how many of our students voted absentee, how many of our students voted in early voting, and how many of our students voted on election day. It's all anonymized, we have no names, it's just gross numbers, but it tells us to a student all of those details. And therefore, we have been able to learn and find out how bad it really has been here on this university campus. And it's been fascinating. If you want to look at those NSOLVE data, this is the American Democracy Project website, which is mtsu.edu/AmeriDem. And every single one of the reports that we have been sent since we joined the study in 2014 are posted there for public consumption. We initially, when they came, were so embarrassed by those numbers that we hid them, and that's the truth. There was much discussion about, oh, we're too embarrassed to show these to anybody. And then a few years in, we started getting bolder, and we thought, information is good. As long as you know the facts, you know where the baseline is, you can only get better, and hiding it is not a good way to deal with any truth. So we have begun to address it. And here's what we started finding out. When we got our first data, when we signed up in 2014, there was a 2014 interim election, and we found out that in that election only 15% of MTSU students voted in 2014, which, if that doesn't just scream out at you, I don't know what does, but that's really bad. So it tells us that in our 20-year objective toward moving toward greater civically engaged students, we have a long way to go. Please note that 4 years later, for the interim election in 2018, our numbers had jumped up to 38%. And we are still awaiting 2022s because it takes Tufts University and the Intel program about a year, so now it's a little bit longer than a year. We're expecting the 2022 data any time. But when we first genuinely dug in to start addressing this, the 2014 election was over, the 2012 election was over, and we kind of were, you know, it was 2014, we were just looking at these, we didn't know what to do, we were kind of mortified and embarrassed, and really we kind of hit our heads in the 2016 presidential election. We didn't do too much on campus that year. Also, I can tell you we were not at the Honors College yet in 2016. And although we had progressed from 2012 to 2016 by 1%, it wasn't a marked increase. But as we started honestly confronting these numbers, we thought, dadgum, something's got to be done about this very seriously. And it was at the end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017 that we moved to the Honors College. And we worked our rear ends off over the next number of years. And we bumped up 20 points by 2020. And our goal is, y'all, this coming fall, to be sure that MTSU is up in the 80s. Just to let you know, we have a running internal Conference USA competition with our other schools who are in our football conference. And Rice University is in our football conference. And Rice University students vote in the upper 80 percentile every year. So we have yet to beat them. But 2024 could be the date if we get everybody registered where they can vote. So again, our objective is to construct environments on this campus where education for democracy and civic responsibility is pervasive across the campus, not partial. And that means within every student organization, within every student group, central to your identity as an organization, that you understand that no matter what you do, if you are a horseback riding club, or if you are a water skiing club, or if you are a back to nature club hiking in the woods, that you make sure that every one of your members is registered where he or she can vote, because that component piece is a measurable calculus that we can use to showcase that we're achieving the objectives that we really want this university to be. So, I mentioned that at the end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017 is when the decision was made to move the American Democracy Project to the University Honors College. And why? And it became really clear and simple to the powers that be across this university that the Honors College at this university represents our highest ideals. It represents our highest goals. It represents our university-wide highest aspirations. It's the best that we're aiming for all students, for everybody, for all disciplines, for every part of the campus, and for all quadrants of the student body. Honors makes clear that, and placing ADP within honors makes clear that this university wants this objective and this work to be pervasive across the university, central to the university's identity, and aspirational so that it's something that we are working on and that we consider quite noble. I put it up there in terms of nobility with our honors creed and the preamble of the United States Constitution. We the people are committing to forming a more perfect union, and we, the faculty and students here at the Honors College, acknowledge our deep-held beliefs that we are aspiring to these greater goals of character, quality, and the finest aspirations that we know to be true and right about scholarship and about living a good life. So that's our objective, and that's our goal, and that's why we're here. We have so many benchmarks that we can strive for and attain. We have so many aspects of the university yet to really buy into the notion, but the more we're able to speak it and the more we're able to engage you all in work, that's how we're going to accomplish this objective. It's an all hands on deck. requires everybody participating and also everybody having a shared value for it. So I put in the title of this talk that it needs to be a workshop, and that's where I want to open the floor right now, is I want to be sure that every single one of you is registered to vote. I brought up that subject at the very beginning of the semester. I have talked to some of you one-on-one, a lot of you have followed through. Done a little calculus on who signed up for this course, and there are quite a number of you who are seniors. How many of you all are graduating in May? So some of you are seniors who are maybe not graduating until December or maybe even next year. Are there those of you who would fall in that category? All right. The next election that's coming up nationally, there are other elections that are going on in other states. There are important ones in Virginia right now. There are important ones in various states around the country. Tennessee has had some county elections this fall. Williamson County had a very important one just last month, very recently. But the big next election for us to be apprised of is the fact that Tennessee is a Super Tuesday state. That's going to be on Tuesday, March 5th of 2024. And we have been working all fall to be sure that everyone is registered and can participate in that. Now, a primary election, which is what Super Tuesday is, may not be too sexy and it may not be all that interesting. If you are in the Republican Party, you probably have a lot more choice. I do think there's getting to be some competition potentially for President Biden within the Democratic Party platform. So even if you're not especially excited about those two options, I want to urge you to go vote in the Super Tuesday election this winter. And the reason why I want to urge you to do it is just to get your feet wet and get behind one of those polling machines. Here's something else I need to tell you about Super Tuesday, which is we are urging everybody to please get registered where you can vote in person when you're on this campus in the fall, because that's a very important election, and you will get charged up for that. I'm very excited, I know. But this winter one may be kind of, not so sure that I want to really engage in that. We are having a primary on Wednesday night. Are we not, Dean Fowler? We're going to do a watch party? How's that coming out? Well, Super Tuesday is actually during MTSU's spring break. So that turns out to be a good thing because the largest number of our students votes during early voting. So if you are registered here in Rutherford County, we're going to be passing out the word all this winter. The last couple of weeks of February is when early voting will take place, and I want you to get to the polls and just go vote, because there have been a lot of studies done on why students don't vote. We know all the excuses, but one fact that we do know that's also relevant that you may not say aloud, but we have had that said in private over and over and over again, and studies have been shown to prove it, that students who have never voted before are actually fearful of what a voting booth is all about and how to push the buttons. So I'd say that an opportunity to exercise your skills in that regard, feel the technology. It's not going to look like your computer. They're pretty weird, they're antiquated, they're not swell, and they're not sort of completely idiot-proof, but there's always a person nearby each polling unit. You can ask questions, say, is it the red button or the blue button, or do I pull the lever, what do I do? And they'll without peering over the edge, they will talk you through it. So it's good to go try it, and this is our trial opportunity, and we're gifted it this winter. So everybody needs to absolutely get registered where you can vote during early voting in the end of February for Super Tuesday, and then you'll be well positioned to participate in the ballot in the fall. And when you come back in the fall, I want you to be a part of the cohort that lifts our number to 89%. That'd be great. Let's have MTSU beat Rice University and also beat ourselves, because that's the honest objective, is we want to show improvement. So when I really look at having moved from 15% to 38, that was powerful. Moving from 44, 45 to 65, that was powerful. Let's just keep the upward trajectory going. And let's let our university have that also as an assessment measure to be able to showcase among all the others that we do. So, questions, thoughts, queries? How may I help you get registered? Sir?
Yes, so I have sat through one of your lectures before around this time last year, and you encouraged us to vote where we sleep. For those of us who are not too familiar on how to register to vote in Rutherford County, Tennessee, would you walk the class through that, please?
Yeah, and it's almost an individual dialogue with each person. It depends on if you if you have a driver's license that is out of state or a Tennessee driver's license. So if your mom and daddy live in Florida, but you live here now, you absolutely may register here. You will need to get registered with me on this paper form if you have an out-of-state driver's license. And to go vote, you will need a passport. I just found out from Carter that he got his passport in 2 months. I go, bravo, U.S. Passport Office. That was really outstanding. Let Carter be your model. Therefore, do not be afraid. Plunge into that, because we here at the Honors College want you to do study abroad. You're going to need a passport. Everybody needs a passport. It does cost a little money. There's Passport Office in the basement of the KUC. They'll take your picture down there for free, and they'll help you with the paperwork. And it is legitimately right next door to the window for the post office. It's at a 90-degree angle from the post office door. Get that underway. But thank you, Carter, for asking that. If you have an out-of-state driver's license, but you reside here either in the dorms or in an apartment, you are a Tennessee resident and you claim Tennessee residency, and we can help you. It's just that you cannot get registered online through the online portal, which is mtsu.edu/vote, which is what this takes you to, and there's the type in at the bottom. If you are a Tennessee student with a Tennessee driver's license, and even if you are from Shelby County or Knox County, you absolutely may register and vote right here in Rutherford County. It doesn't matter. And when you go to vote, you literally show your Knox County driver's license. Perfectly all right. What you also need to take with you when you go vote is some proof that you live here. So that can be an electric bill, a rental agreement. If you live in the dorms, it can be, you can pull up your pipeline and show your rental contract.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple. But you also are a Tennessee resident, even if you have a different driver's license, but you can be a Rutherford County resident as well. Carter mentioned that we say you should register where you put your shoes under the bed, where you sleep at night, Monday through Friday. If you're a commuting student and you drive back to Bedford County, we recommend that you get registered in Bedford, stay registered in Bedford. That's where you're commuting back to. But if you're here, get registered here, because it's going to make it super easy for you. Even though we do not have a polling place on our university campus, there are plenty nearby and they're easy enough to get to. And on special election days, we facilitate getting you to the polls, so that's a non-issue. If you live in the dorms, there's one hiccup. There is a specific address that you live at. And if you go through our mtsu.edu/vote website instruction, it'll show you that the address where you reside, now that you live in Cummings, room such and such, is not Cummings, room such and such. You live at 1301 East Main Street, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Rutherford County. And all that information on how to do that is on our website. And then it will say, oh, but you don't get your mail there. And no, you don't. But you do get your mail at your MTSU P.O. box. So where you get your mail has to match the county in which you reside. So you put your MTSU P.O. box as the location where your mail is. Again, this is too much to say aloud and hard to remember, but you see me personally, or see Nancy over there personally, and we'll fix you up. We got you. Other questions?
So you said we have to bring our license and proof of residency. What if we live with our parents and we don't have anything in our name?
I know. It's a problem. Does your driver's license match it?
Yes.
Well, if your driver's license matches it, then you're fine. It's just if your driver's license says another address, you need one showing that you live at 1301 East Main Street or on South Rutherford Boulevard or whatever it is. But I understand that can be an issue. Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious what your thoughts and opinions are on the mail-in voting. That was a new system we saw implemented, and you seem very partial to the voting booths, so what are your thoughts and opinions?
Well, mail-in voting absolutely works, and we will assist you with that. It is often questioned. I don't want your vote questioned. And there have been lots of issues about boxes of ballots being shipped in, and were they counted, were they opened correctly? If you would like to do absentee voting, you absolutely can. If you would like to stay registered in Shelby County, by all means, we're going to assist you in doing that. What you need to know, though, it's a cautionary note. It is a time-consuming process. You have to apply for a ballot. They have to mail it through you through the U.S. Postal Service. You have to receive it, fill it out, and then you have to mail it back through the U.S. Postal Service, and it has to be received no later than Election Day. Do they tell you the last day to apply for an absentee ballot is 1 week before the election? No! That back and forth with the U.S. Post Office will never happen in a week. And that's a way to guarantee that your vote won't be counted. And I don't want your vote not to be counted. I definitely want it to be counted. So, absentee voting is useful for people who are bedridden. It's useful for people who live long distances and they're really proactive and they want to do it like 2 months in advance. Get on it. I'm going to help you do that. I'll even pay for your postage. But it's not really the cup of tea for most of us. And we also know that even during COVID, only 5% of MTSU students voted by absentee ballot. Before that, it was pretty much a steady 3%. I would say it is the lowest functioning way of voting. And you don't try to bring up the bottom of the barrel. You try to work with what already works pretty well and increase that. Because we would have a long way to go to improve everybody's absentee balloting. But if we're already right here on voting in person, let's lift that one. But conversely, if you're a motivated student who wants to vote absentee, absolutely we're going to help you do that. Other questions? All right.
Let's give a hand.